This meeting may be convened into closed executive session for the purposes of seeking confidential legal advice from the city attorney on any item on the agenda at any time during the meeting. The City of Bastrop reserves the right to reconvene, recess, or realign the regular session or called executive session or order of business at any time prior to adjournment. It is 6:30. I'm calling us to order. I want everyone to realize that we are exactly at a quorum with 3 council members and the mayor. That's 4. We are at a quorum. And I also want everyone to know we're probably going to be taking a break every hour and 15, hour and 30 minutes, because if anybody has an issue, if one person leaves, we're out, we won't have a quorum. So we're going to be taking breaks on a regular basis, and you see that we have a fairly substantial agenda tonight. So just know that every hour and a half or so we'll be taking a break. So tonight we are thrilled to have with us the Bastrop High School Navy Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. With us tonight we have Cadet Commanding Officer Kayla Simon, Cadet Seaman Alex Holder, and Seaman Riley Dunn. If you would all please rise, they will be leading us in both pledges, and then they will be reciting the Cadet Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one indivisible. Ma'am, this cadet pledge is: I am a Navy Junior ROTC cadet. Always conduct myself in a manner to bring credit to my family and school and Corps of Cadets. I am the future United States of America. I am loyal and patriotic. I do not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. I always be accountable for my actions and deeds. Always practice good citizenship. I'll work hard to improve my mind and strengthen my body. I will seek the mantle of leadership and stand prepared to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Hoorah! Up, out, face forward.
I always love the Cadet Pledge. And tonight we have Reverend Bob Long with us, if you'll please remain standing.
Lord God in heaven, as we come before you tonight, we come with thanksgiving and praise for the opportunity to live, to work, to play in Bastrop, Texas. We thank you for this city council, our mayor, our city manager. Give them the wisdom they need tonight to conduct business, make decisions that affect all of our lives. We thank you for the season that we're in, the season that we celebrate your birth, Lord. And we ask that you help us to remember and do the things that we should, that we would be more like you and serve others and bless others and honor others. Lord, we also pray for those besides those behind the podium tonight. We pray for all the workers in our city. We ask you to keep them safe. God, watch over them, keep them prosperous and healthy. Lord, we pray for our police department, our fire department, our first responders, those who watch for us even when we're sleeping. We thank you that they stand between us and the things of this world that would bring evil against us. We're grateful for them. And we're grateful for your provision, Lord, for our lives individually and your provision during this season. We ask that you bless us, that we might in turn bless those that are less fortunate. Thank you for the year that we're coming to a close in, and we look forward to the new year with hope and promise, because you will be with us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Long. Okay, we're at the mayor's report, and we're going to start with some really exciting news. Sarah O'Brien is going to come share, and I'm not stealing any of her thunder. She gets to tell you all our good news.
Mayor, Council, I am excited to announce that we found out at 10 a.m. this morning we are one of the top 10 finalists for Small Business Revolution, which is a a television series sponsored by Deluxe Corporation. They will actually come into our town and infuse almost $500,000 into our small business. So the next step, we find out tomorrow all of the details about their site visit in January. Hopefully we make it to the top 5. We are the only town in Texas to be selected, and if we make it to the top 5, we will rely on all of you to get your votes because it'll be a fan favorite competition. So super excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah and I know Dick Smith with Main Street, and Sean, there was just a number of people that participated in that application, and that's pretty awesome to have that type of opportunity to infuse some money into our downtown area. The next person I'm going to have come up as a part of my mayor's report, it's Time Texas, and it is a program sponsored by HEB, and Terry Moore is going to talk with us about it.
I brought notes because I do tend to talk longer than I should, so keep me on task, right? It's Time Texas really is the perfect partnership between the YMCA and the city of Bastrop. It's all about driving local effort to make healthy easier in our communities. So what we're going to do, it all started when the mayor signed the pledge for the community. We're glad you did that. Thank you very much. And what it started was a challenge for our community. Opportunity to build points, make things happen. Every school, business, and organization and individual can get involved in it. The way we win is we garner points, and part of those points is the mayor's pledge. It's doing an event. It's creating a mayor's health and fitness council, all of those things. And of course, we are going to do those things because there are multiples of thousands of points that we get for that. So I'd like to say, as of this moment, we have our Mayor's Health and Fitness Council. Those members include the mayor, of course, Council Member Lyle Nelson, City Rec Coordinator Victoria Pinchek, Bastrop YMCA Board Member Christy Lee, the Y Youth Health and Wellness Coordinator Rich, and then Hefner, and then myself. We are going to do an event. That event is scheduled for January the 13th. It is called Happy Healthy New Year's Bash, and it'll be a 3-hour event at the Convention Center from 9 to noon. We'll invite all of our community health and wellness organizations together to do demonstrations, exhibits, provide opportunities for people to learn how to be healthy, get those health seekers information. Everything is about points. So when you register, we'll be encouraging people to register at that event. It is a 3-month challenge. We will win. We will win. We will win. So it starts on January the 8th. We'll be encouraging people to sign up at our 13th event and throughout the 3 months. But it doesn't end there. It is a year-round continual program to continually make our community healthier, because while, yes, we love to win, our end game is to help our community be healthier and stronger. So I'm excited to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. She was talking to me about it's about making healthy choices and changing your life, and I said it's about winning. It's a competition. So that's why she was putting that in. Some of you that know me know I'm slightly competitive. So it's January 8th through March 4th, and the one thing that Terry didn't mention, and I'm reading straight off their program, the winning community in each size category will receive funds to put toward future community health efforts. So we are all about free money to help our community. So I'm really looking forward to that, and there'll be some more things on our website about that. And besides that, any of us that have ever belonged to a gym, we know that it's wall to wall from January to spring break, and then sometimes it tends to fall off. But it'll be a great way to kick off the new year. So for my Mayor's Minute this evening, I want to talk about an item. Everybody keeps teasing me about keeping track of how many months have I been mayor, and soon I'll just start saying it's been a year, but it's about 7 months right now, and I've gotten all kinds of phone calls. I get voicemails, I get emails, and I got the least friendliest email I have ever received. I received in the last few days, and it addressed something that I want to that I want to talk about because the person who sent the email didn't sign the email, so I could reply to the email, but I only know the email account that sent it. So I want to respond to it publicly. I'm hoping that if they were interested enough to write the email, that hopefully they're watching so they can hear my answer. And it implied that we, as a dais, as a council, had tried to do something sneaky. And while I recognize that we are not all always going to agree about everything, and it is fine that we don't agree, I want to clarify that this council has spent an enormous amount of time and effort to make sure that everything we do is transparent. So I just want to remind everybody of a few things. Our agendas are posted on Friday. The agenda packet, I think this time it's over 400 pages. 337 pages tonight. Those of you that watch the council meeting, you'll hear me sometimes say, if you're at home, I'm on page 200, I'm on page 210. All of the backup for the items that we're going to discuss are posted on Friday, and you have access to it. I realize not everyone has a computer and not everyone has internet service, but I would encourage you to go to the library or find a friend and find a way to get access to it. The agenda's posted outside City Hall, and we will certainly help you get a hard copy of any packet information that you need. The other thing is that, just like we're doing tonight, things are live streamed. So the decisions that we make, the discussions are all fully available. Everybody sitting on the council has a published phone number and has an email address. So although you may not always agree with what we do, and you certainly, everybody has a right to that. Quite frankly, we don't all always exactly agree, and that's why we live in a democracy where majority rules, and that's how we take votes and move forward with business. But I do not want anyone to think that we are in any way not trying to have a transparent government and have transparency to the things that we make decisions on. I will remind you, if you look at our agenda, you'll see that there are work discussion items. Almost everything that we vote on has been on a prior council meeting as a work discussion. So the first things that we talk about are always things that we discuss, and we give the city manager some direction, and then it'll come back to another meeting and we'll make a vote. So that's my 101 on transparency. If there's other things that anybody thinks we should be doing, I'm certainly open to suggestions. So it has been a busy 2 weeks. We've had record highs, we've had snow, we've had parades, we've had all kinds of fun things. We've had a chicken meeting, we made the news on that one. The First Friday Art Walk, I went to that on December 1st, and I also went to the Christmas Carol Rag, a play that's being put on at the Opera House, and they have one more weekend. So if you haven't seen that program, I would really encourage you to go to that. We had a snow day on December 2nd. We've done quite a bit of training. Council had a joint meeting with both the BAIPP board and also the Main Street board. I had on my mayor's report that I would be attending the Chambers Mingle Jingle, but I ended up at the some of you may or may not have seen it. KView did a My Hometown, and their My Hometown last week was Bastrop. And I was interviewed at the Hyatt, and it was a live interview, and I didn't know how to be there at 5 and 6:30 and be at Farm Street Opry at 7 o'clock, and yes, that's the night that it snowed. So I apologize that I did not make it to the Mingle Jingle, but Sean Kirkpatrick was there for council. And even though he forgot to say he was there for all of us, he was there. Then on Friday, I was at a TDC sales tax workshop, and Monday through Thursday, the city manager, myself, and maybe about 15 of us from staff did the 4-day Fema training. It's ICS 300 and 400. Just know that it was 400. It was 4 days, felt like 400 hours. 4 days of Fema training to make sure that all of staff is adequately trained to handle any emergencies we might have in the future. Last Friday night, I was at the Historic Society's Rendezvous Ball. On the 9th, we had the library open house, and if you didn't participate, you really missed out. The kids had the cutest gingerbread houses, and they had stuff going all day. It was really neat. I did the historic home tour, and then I was honored to be the Grand Marshal at the parade Saturday night, and I know that we had showings of Elf on the Shelf, we had a Christmas tree, there was a gingerbread man, there was the Abominable Snowman, but I believe the Grinch stole the show, and for some of us, we kind of got a kick out of knowing that it was Mr. Joe behind the Grinch costume. Last night, I was at the robotics showcase. There were kids there from Cedar Creek High School, Bastrop High School, Bastrop Middle School, and Smithville School. It was such a neat program with their 3D printers, and those kids are really doing some great stuff. And then here we are at council tonight. Tomorrow, we have our first quarterly community support meeting, so we're looking forward to that. And there's a few of us that'll be going to the TML regional meeting. This weekend, we have the Sip, Shop, and Swirl, and I know that it's sold out, but the businesses will still be open, so you can still come and shop with all of us. And next Monday is the monthly BEDC board meeting, and next Tuesday is the open house. And then, thankfully, things are hopefully going to slow down for just a little while. And then in January, I'll go to the Chamber Luncheon on Wednesday, January 3rd. It'll be Farm Street Opry on January 4th, and First Friday again on January 5th. So it is going to be quite busy between now and the next council meeting. With that, Mr. Peterson, is there anything you'd like to add on your council report?
Yes, just one little small thing, Mayor. Well, I won't say a small thing, it was a big thing. The lighted Christmas parade was something else. Our car club did a Hot Wheels theme with the kids up there, and they loved the little cars that we gave out to the kids. We ran out and didn't have enough. But the lighted parade was really, really something to see, and a lot of people showed up. I think we had people from out of town that came in to see our parade, which was very, very nice. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Nelson?
Well, you've already mentioned some of the things that I participated in along with you, but not near as many of them as you participated in. But I did want to say that on the 7th, we had a regularly scheduled Parks Board meeting, and that outstanding group of people are really creative and geared to do many, many things. A great volunteer group. And relative to the parade, the only thing I can say is that I got to ride with Santa and Mrs. Claus. They were quite a lovely couple. And the parade was just outstanding from the perspective. The crowds were just wonderful. So.
And you were sporting a Santa hat on your cowboy hat, looking quite dapper from the pictures I saw.
This is Texas.
Yes, yes. And took a really neat picture of City Hall after your Parks Board meeting with the snow.
Walked outside, saw the snow falling, and it just amazed me. And after I picked myself up off of the ground, decided to take a picture and send it out.
There you go. It was just beautiful. It was really, really beautiful. Councilmember Ennis.
I'd like to dovetail to Councilman Peterson and Councilman Nelson's comments and go a little bit further by saying thank you to the staff, the tremendous amount of work it took to put the Christmas parade and all the Christmas activities. They were amazing, and it was quite an experience. And I thought I was something big. People were waving to me until I realized they weren't waving to me. They were waving to Santa Claus right behind me. So it was a great experience.
It really was, and I apologize. I should have given a special shout out to Steve Ballard. That's who decorated the Land Rover that I was in, and he really did a great job. It was a lot of fun. Okay, Ms. Umbel, I think you had a couple things.
Yes, ma'am. One of the things that I wanted to alert our citizenry to is by now you should have received your utility bill. Some may have. My understanding is some have not. Our due date is normally this Friday, December 15th, but we have had some technical challenges getting the bills out. So we will extend the due date from December 15th until December 22nd, and cutoffs will be January 2nd. So our apologies for the confusion, but this extra week should help us get back on track.
Excellent, and I know they can call the utility office if they've got any concerns. Is that it? All right. Okay, we're at the bottom of page 1. I'm at item 5A, received presentation regarding park land dedication at Bob Bryant Park and extension of the Boys and Girls Club contract. Mr. Joe.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If you remember at the last meeting, we talked about extending the lease with parkland dedication and the Boys and Girls Club. So as we were doing that, we just went back and we're going to go over some history and then talk about why that necessarily may not work out. So in 2005, when the parkland was dedicated, that's now known as Bob Bryant Park, the Bryant family had a desire to have this 1 acre tract be for indoor recreation. And essentially what happened was, as that being part of the deed, we entered into an agreement. There were some key points in the agreement that we need to follow up on, and they had 10 years to get this thing built. There was some other extension built in when they had a $300,000 fiscal requirement to be met. And since none of those were met, we actually, in reviewing the agreement, spoke with our new city attorney, and he's going to explain to you or answer your questions on the local government code and why we cannot dedicate that parkland without an election. So that's going to have to be an election of the qualified voters. Here's the law, something to look at, and he's going to take it from here.
Mayor and Council, this was originally brought to me as a contract extension or a new contract, basically achieving what the last one did. And Mr. Joe mentioned, because the original contract wasn't satisfied, the land did automatically revert back to us. We wanted to be simple. In order for us to convey land, there's a couple of catches in state law. The first is, if the land is designated as a park, as this is, it requires a vote of the people in order to alienate. So that's a step we would have to go forward. If that were to occur and the voters did approve it, we still are not allowed to be charitable. We can't give the land away. We can only sell it for fair market value, which is determined by bid or auction. And so at this point, my recommendation to the council is to take no action. I don't think we need to take action tonight. And instead, let's explore with the Boys and Girls Club the options of doing something along the lines of a long-term lease. That might be a possibility that satisfies the laws, but also will give them the ability to move forward in times like that. And that's my recommendation.
Makes sense to me. Is there any questions? Mr. Peterson, Mr. Nelson? Okay.
Thank you.
No action as instructed. That's pretty painless. Okay, we're on to 5B, receive presentation on the proposed update to Subdivision Ordinance Part 2. I thought we were pulling this.
That's being pulled.
Are you going to do it or?
No, that's being pulled.
Okay, so it's being pulled. Mr. Gaddis is ill, but I did want to make a comment because I know Planning and Zoning reviewed Part 1, I guess, at their last P&Z meeting, and I want to clarify both for P&Z, also for council. I want to make sure that all of us are extremely clear, and also for the general public. We're trying to update our subdivision ordinance. It's really important, and we had set out a timeline, and we are falling behind, and it is much more important to push the timeline and do it correctly than it is to meet a timeline just to meet a timeline. And we were already having to push the timeline even with the presentation tonight. So with Mr. Gaddis being ill, if that requires us to push it out a little bit more, it is important. It's still a top priority, but it's vitally important to do it correctly. I think we all agree to that. So Jennifer, were you going to show a schedule or something?
No, I'm here for the next item.
Oh, okay, you were, all right. So we are not having that presentation. If you're interested in it, the backup stuff is in the agenda packet, so you can see the types of things that David was going to be presenting on, but this will be on our next meeting. And just reminding everyone, there will not be a meeting in 2 weeks. Our next meeting will be the second Tuesday in January. So with that, I'm moving on to 5C, provide update on the villages at Hunter's Crossing and compliance with Conditional Use Permit, which is a CUP, the other way you'll hear people visit about it. Ms. Bills.
Good evening. So this is an update on where we are at with the villages at Hunter's Crossing Apartments. The location of this site is over at the corner of Home Depot Way and SH 304. It's just in this blue area. There is a 100-foot LCRA easement that kind of buffers between the property and the single family. Just a brief history. This area is in the Hunters Crossing master plan that was adopted in 2003 and then was most recently updated in the plan development document in 2011. Starting in February 2017 was when the CUP conditional use permit was approved by City Council. The main request of that was to increase the height, which was allowed at 2.5 stories to 3 stories. And then just this November on the 13th, the site plan was approved by staff, and then the building permits were issued on November 21st, and they have broken ground and they're starting to lay the utilities to serve the buildings. For the conditional use permit, there were 2 conditions that council established as part of the review. The first was to complete a drainage design that planned for the units, or planned for the site to be developed on if the 182 units were 2 stories instead of 3, so increased impervious cover for the drainage. The second condition was to make sure that the light coming from the development would be the same as a 2-story development would produce. For the drainage plans, it was determined that 2 additional buildings would be needed if you were to have 182 units at 2 stories instead of some of the units going to a 3rd story. That increased the building footprint area by a little over 24,000 square feet. So the actual impervious cover of the development is 270,000 and change square feet with a building coverage of almost 108,000 square feet. But the design for the entire site is based off of 294,000 square feet accounting for the increased building coverage if it had been a 2-story development. So what that means is they over-engineered and over-planned for drainage for creating more water than they actually will create off the site. The second condition was on the lighting plan. And in our site plan review, one of the things we review is the total lumen count produced by the site. Our code allows for up to 100,000 lumens per acre, and this site is creating a total of 56,342 lumens per acre. The applicant went a step further and did a photometric study that showed that at any point along the property line, no more than a 0.4 foot candle will spill off the property line, and specifically where that happened was along Home Depot Way towards the corner of SH 304. They had 0.3 right at the property line. For I kind of looked up to see to try to put foot candles in a perspective, and they said for an office you want the lighting to be around 20 to 50 foot candles to read properly in an office. So it's not very much light that's coming off at the property lines. Some other concerns that the applicant did address that they heard during the CUP was building orientation to the single family. All the doors and balconies are oriented away from the south. The windows along the southern exposure are only at the 2nd story, and the stairwells for the site face internally. They don't face out towards the property line. This is the site plan layout. You have the single family from Hunters Crossing here on the left, Home Depot Way on the right. You'll see 2 buildings that are the closest to the property line, which is about 150 feet away. This 3rd building is over 200 feet away. And the balconies are on an east-west exposure. The doors open that direction. And additionally, these 2 units at the end are 2 stories. They ramp up to 3 stories in the middle. And for this one that's angled a little bit, you've got a garage and several carports. They're also between the single family, in addition to the 100-foot LCRA easement that separates the 2. This is what you'd be looking at from the southern exposure if you're standing on the property line. You have the building, the windows that don't go past the 2nd story, and then the light fixtures are right here below the top of the 2nd story. And then the balconies, well, you see the 3rd story, but they're set 1 whole unit back, which you see here. That's the 3rd story balcony right there. Stairwells, this is what you'd see from the parking lot if you're inside the apartment complex development. Similarly, the lights are at the 2nd story of height. And if you're at the property line on any of the sides, this is what you'll see from the outside of the complex. The stairwells route to an interior walkway for all of the units. So you don't see any stairwells on the exterior outside view, and there aren't any lights shown on facing outwards on these facades. Questions?
Council? Mr. Ennis?
Yes, ma'am. I remember, or seem to remember, during the discussions of the approval of this CUP that there were discussions about having a light shield of trees planted along. Evidently that was not included in the conditions of the CUP.
It wasn't a specific condition, but they do have along the southern property line a opaque fence that's actually along between the Elsera easement and the property. So it's not even the property line; it's at the kind of edge of the Elsera easement. They'll have an opaque fence that's 6 feet tall.
6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Really no questions, probably a bit of clarification. On February 14th of this year, as a citizen, a private citizen, as a resident of Hunter's Crossing, I had voiced opposition to the conditional use permit to raise it from 2.5 stories to 3 stories. On the 28th, when council decided to take action, from staff's presentation, I had listed a series of questions looking for assurances for to address the concerns of the residents of Hunter's Crossing. Councilmember Schiff had placed 2 more conditions, as you alluded to in your presentation. And I thought that since the questions were posed in open forum, that the responses should be made in an open forum. So I appreciate the presentation. Hopefully this will mitigate some of the concerns that we that live in that neighborhood have relative to drainage and to light pollution. And I can be assured that if they're not, that we're probably going to hear from additional citizens in subsequent sessions. But I do appreciate you providing those responses to me. I really do, and I know the neighborhood does too. Thank you.
Councilmember Peterson, do you have any? Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Bills. I appreciate that. There is no staff and board reports tonight, and we are at citizen comments. Do I have any citizen comments, Madam Secretary? Rhonda Van Diver?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Rhonda Van Diver. Mayor, I'm accepting your invitation to speak about the signs in our house. Bastrop City officials and staff have forged, altered, and/or destroyed many official records relating to our property and those of others. Under the direction of former City Manager Mike Talbot, City Attorney Joe Christie Brown, and Planning Director Melissa McCullum, several illegal Board of Adjustment meetings were held, and we, along with others, were denied our civil right of due process. The city allowed Mike Talbot to hire attorney William Charles Bundren, his friend of 30 years, to sue us in 2015. We countersued the city and the Board of Adjustment. Mr. Bundren is the same lawyer that Talbot hired to sue Pine Forest Investment, the same lawyer who has billed the city $1 million to date. During the course of 2015, it became apparent that the city of Bastrop was using taxpayer dollars and staff as weapons against its citizens. I went to the Bastrop Police Department to discuss what was happening. They explained official oppression and abuse of office to me and that they were crimes. However, they could not help me because they would not investigate their employer. Despite this, they advised me to record all communications with city officials and staff. We were told by city officials that Talbot and Brown admitted that our documents had been altered and we were denied due process. The resignations of Talbot, Brown, and McCullum were accepted, followed by Ted Bowers earlier this year. In an effort to help the city settle all lawsuits, we signed a settlement agreement. The city violated the agreement, and now the manager and city attorney will not speak to us. Rather, the city claims to know nothing about the signs in our windows. The council instructed the manager to attempt to settle all lawsuits, yet the citizens of Bastrop continue to pay Bundren's bills and those of the city attorney as if they have endless funds. I come to you tonight to ask you to honor your promise of transparency. I ask you to state publicly that the city has used its deep pockets and immense power to harass, threaten, and abuse its targeted citizens. Admit that city employees have altered official documents, deprived citizens of due process, used the power of taxation to pay for endless, frivolous litigation, and abused the judicial system. I ask you all to honor your oath of office. Please make this a part of the official record of tonight's meeting, December 12th, 2017, in its entirety. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Van Diver. The next person we have to speak is Mike Kelly.
Hi, I know almost all of you. Please forgive me if my voice is harsh. I'm on chemo. I'm here to help you with the transparency, folks. I used to run the Senate Committee on Intergovernmental Relations, which dealt with municipal policy. I did that for a number of years. I was the Director of State Relations for the City of Houston. I dealt with legislation. Since that time, I also have been involved in various political campaigns, and I'm aware of your obligations under state law in your campaigns. So let me help you out. Connie, I met with you for 2 hours when you were a candidate and laid out the details of what she just said. You called me back and said you were worried because Robert Leffingwell had sent a letter to the residents of Pine Forest saying they were going to be charged a fee. I showed you documents to prove that that was false. You then refused to take my phone calls. This was before you were mayor. Wow. I met with you a couple of times and I asked you if you'd talk to me. And you said, no, you wouldn't. This was before you were a city council member. You did, however, talk to a number of people who thought that the lawsuit against Pine Forest was nuts, and you promised you'd help them out. Now you won't take their phone calls. Bill, you wouldn't call me back after we talked to each other and you said you would. Mr. Peterson, you know that what Ms. Van Diver said is true. Unfortunately, the two other city council members here who know it's true are not here tonight. I really thank you for taking care of this city. Connie, I've been really impressed by your work as mayor. You have kept most of your campaign promises. The reorganization that you've done with the city is terrific. Linda, WCID asked to meet with you to encourage you to settle the Pine Forest lawsuit. You said you would talk to them after you met with Judge Poppy. After you met with Judge Poppy, you refused to talk to them. You continue to refuse to talk to them, and in fact, in conversations with Judge Poppy, you have said you support the lawsuit all the way, you don't want to see the settlement papers, and that you will pay for an appeal to the Supreme Court. Let me emphasize, folks, you're paying all the legal bills here. In that settlement, I offered to pay all your legal bills if we could just sit down and work it out. You refused to meet. Thank you for your courtesy.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We're now at the consent agenda. Is there any item that council would like pulled from the consent agenda? Is there any item that anyone in the audience would like pulled from the consent agenda? Madam Secretary, if you'll read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda reads as follows. Item 8A, consider action to approve minutes from the November 28, 2017 meeting. Item 8B, consider action to approve resolution number R-2017-98 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the 2018 council meeting schedule attached as Exhibit A and providing an effective date. Item 8C, consider action to approve resolution number R-2017-103 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, adopting the budget planning calendar for the fiscal year 2019, attached as Exhibit A, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. Item 8D, consider action to approve the second reading of resolution number R-2017-96 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the terms of an economic development performance agreement between the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation and Seton Family of Hospitals, approving the terms of an agreement for construction of stormwater drainage improvements with Seton Family of Hospitals and 71 Retail Partners, LP, in an amount exceeding $10,000, repealing all resolutions in conflict, providing severability, and providing an effective date. Item 8E, consider action to approve the second reading of resolution number R-2017-97 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the expenditure of Bastrop Economic Development Funds for the extension of the public road known as Agnes Street as an infrastructure improvement project in an amount exceeding $10,000, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. This concludes the consent agenda.
Thank you. I'm happy to entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
I have a motion from Councilmember Ennis.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
All right, we're on 9A. We've certainly started spiffying up council chambers, I see. Okay, we're at 9A, consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-29 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances to provide for creating and enacting Chapter 1, Article 1.19 of the Bastrop Code of Ordinances, creating a Youth Advisory Council, and providing for the council's organization, membership, responsibilities, and resources, and providing for findings of fact, enactment, effective date, repealer, severability, codification, and proper notice and meeting. Ms. Umble?
Mayor and Council, we are delighted to have Mrs. Megan Brandon and her wonderful group from the Colorado Collegiate Academy here. If you'll remember back in May, Ms. Brandon and her class at that time came and pitched the idea of a youth advisory council. And the council at that time absolutely agreed that that was a wonderful opportunity to get our youth involved. Part of the purpose of this program called Generation Citizens is to teach our youth about government. So Mrs. Brandon and I visited, and I indicated to her at that time that we could prepare the documents or it could be a learning experience, and she said that her class would want to take the journey. So this evening they are here to present to you their findings and their suggested bylaws and ask you to consider establishing the very first Youth Advisory Council. So with that, Ms. Brandon, if you and your team will come forward and make your presentation.
I will remind all of you, you need to speak into the microphone or the people at home won't be able to hear you.
Good evening, Mayor, and we are, well, I'm Nicholas Roper. I am a 10th grader from the Colorado River Collegiate Academy, and I am from the Speak Up, Speak Out team, and we are trying to create a youth advisory council. With me, I have Annie Jo, Faith, CJ, Sarai, James, Jessica, and Jordan. We just wanted to give an update on what we've been doing for these past couple of months and what we've been achieving / trying to achieve, because as 9th graders last year, we were partnered with the Generation Citizen program, and we had these democracy coaches that were volunteers from college, and they came into our classrooms and they let these students choose a topic in their community that they wanted to do and see ways that they could probably like resolve it or find some way that they could help. And so last year, some of us were on one of the groups that decided that there weren't a lot of leadership opportunities for the youth in Bastrop, and so we wanted to start making the Student Advisory Council. So we've actually been working on this for almost a year. And
so last year in Generation Citizen, we surveyed all of Circa, which then was only 9th through 11th, as this is our 4th year now. So on the 4 topics that we had, 1 strongly disagree and 5 strongly agree. The first topic, I know where to look for leadership opportunities. As you can see from the graph, there's a very minimal amount of people that agree that they know even where to start looking for a place where they can be involved with the community. So this is obviously one of the major problems as getting youth involved in the community. Topic number 2, I'm involved with the community of Bastrop. Sorry, I switched those around. The topic number 2, I know where to look for leadership opportunities. Once again, there's very minimal people knowing where to look, where to start looking. And the involvement is also very small. Topic number 3, I feel that Bastrop has enough youth activities. Here you can see people disagree as to whether they think they have enough or if they don't. It differs for many people, and we believe the Yaak can bring these people together in order to have more young adult involvement. Topic number 4, high school students can benefit from learning about local government. As you can see, the vast majority of the students decided that they want to learn about local government, and this program will really encourage all the students, not just in Circa, but in the community as a whole, to be involved in events around the community.
Select members of our team have had one-on-one interviews with a handful of students here at Circa. In those interviews, we asked them open-ended questions of the survey. The general consensus was that there's not enough recreational activities available in Bastrop, and even if there were, we don't know where to look for them. Having a youth advisory council would help solve all of that by allowing students, or just young adults in general, to have an outlet where they can help connect and learn with like-minded peers while working while making a difference in their community.
So from all of this, we were able to create our Bastrop Youth Advisory, or Yaak, bylaws. So this is a rough what I'm about to go more in detail with this, but basically our bylaws state that we're going to promote involvement, meaning we don't just want to have people involved, but we want people to have fun involving and be able to see and show others that involving themselves in the community is something they enjoy. We will state that where they must be in order to be in the Youth Advisory Council, they have to be at least in the BISD or the district boundaries. The members should be in high school or the equivalent whenever in homeschooling. And we want to make sure they have their grades settled and their school settled before they join things outside of school. So we want them to have a 3.0 of a GPA average. And not only that, as many clubs as is a council, there will be many leadership opportunities. So our purpose, as previously stated, is to also promote interest. What we've been doing is we've researched other communities, and we want to be able to bring what other cities are doing into Bastrop. As membership, we don't want to just limit this to the high schools. We want to be able to have homeschoolers or of the equivalent, and we want to keep them in high school so that we can all have roughly the same age group, so we can keep right. And since we want to keep the city council actively involved, we want to have all these members be appointed with the city charter. So, in the council, there's going to be a president, which does, as most things presidents do, would guide and lead the council, and the vice president would take over if the president is absent, and it would also help lessen the burden of what the president has. A secretary would be there to take notes and to make sure that the entire meetings are going to schedule, and the parliamentarian is a very important role, is to keep the peace and to ensure the council is on task, because we want to have lots of opinions and lots of different views, but we don't want just bickering, we want action. And so a parliamentarian will hopefully be able to see both sides of the argument and be able to see both ways and be able to bring them into Bastrop. And of course these officers will be elected by a majority vote. And the members, we're going to have 12 students and a quorum of 9 to fill the board positions. Sadly, all youth advisory councils must come to an end, and they can do it voluntary and involuntary. Mainly voluntary is just a written resignation that is looked over. Thank you.
Okay, so here's my question. As mayor, how am I going to find 12 people that want to be on the council?
We're working with Dr. Christy Lee within the school district, and she's here tonight. And we've met with her several times, kind of keeping her informed of the progress that we're making with the Yaak. And so we talked that myself and Dr. Lee and maybe a select group of students will go to Bastrop High School and Cedar Creek High School, because again, we're opening it, it's a district-wide deal, and then some contacts in the homeschooling community as well. And so we'll start recruiting that way. And we're hoping that with the city's help, we can really start promoting it on social media and maybe do some kind of little promo video, featuring the students. So I think once the word gets out, we'll easily get 12 people.
Okay, great. And I'm fine with that, and I don't want to, I'm hoping that we're able to get this approved tonight and move forward, but it wouldn't hurt my feelings if there was an amendment of some sort that said that you guys would help be involved in that. For myself and for a new mayor, when we're already looking at 13 boards and commissions, to then be trying to find 12 high school students with a 3.0 GPA, we're getting in an area that it's really hard for someone sitting in my chair to be able to know that kind of information. So if we have a suggestion, I would really appreciate if I would be happy to appoint if somebody was in charge of the nominations to help kind of gather that information. That would be very helpful. Any comments for any other questions? Yeah, and you guys did great. It's scarier than it seems, isn't it? But you did great. Any questions?
Mayor and council, I want to add just a couple of things. One, they have asked for the opportunity to hold their meetings at the city in this room, and I've told them absolutely. This board will be assigned to Trey Job operationally, Mickey Duvall in the library, as well as Victoria Pinchek in our Parks and Recreation Department. Have a real interest and excitement in working with this group. So we are partnering with them, the city staff, and look forward to the relationship.
Outstanding. I thought I saw a light go on. Councilmember Nelson?
Yeah, a comment and a question. First of all, I commend y'all for wanting to get involved. That's vitally important, and to be a citizen, you need to get involved, so thank y'all for that. The question is, how did y'all arrive at 12 members of the council?
We researched many different youth advisory councils throughout the state of Texas, and we found that the happy medium was 12 members because Bastrop is a small county, and we wouldn't want too many to, that would just be chaos. So 12 members, that's the happy number.
Thank you.
What he's not telling you is you may find 12 has a little bit of chaos that goes along with it. That's what he's trying to tell you. Councilmember Ennis?
First of all, I would like to second what Councilman Nelson said, and congratulations to you folks for being able to get up here and talk so eloquently in front of us. I'd like to address the next question to the mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve this, but how do you want to style that in terms of your questions?
So I would be looking for a friendly amendment to address the presentation of a board of candidates for the mayor to appoint. And Linda also said that we need to, if you are so inclined, if the motion could include that you want it approved and put on the next meeting agenda, that would be helpful for the motion as well. Is that, if someone presents a slate of candidates, do we need to clarify that?
I think what you need is to ask the city attorney to include in this that a recommendation for appointments will be made by the Bastrop Independent School District, just like we do the Main Street Advisory Board, that they will be the recommendation arm to this.
Ms. Brandon, are you satisfied with that?
That sounds great. We're asking maybe, I don't know if that will happen by January's meeting as far as the 12 students appointed, simply because we need to promote it and we need to spread the word at Bastrop High School and Cedar Creek High School, so we may need to push that a little bit further out.
That's fine.
Just for clarification, what this is going to do when it's codified in the ordinance, for those of you that are learning government, for future appointments, what this does is not make it the mayor's responsibility, but in perpetuity says that the Bastrop Independent School District will be responsible for always filling this, because members will come and go. This board will actually be enacted at the next council meeting.
Okay.
But won't anything happen with it until appointments actually occur. So the board could be established so you have something to market. And then we can set a date for February, March, or April and have a slate of appointments at that time for the mayor to make.
Perfect. Because one of the things, like, I won't know when grades come out. I won't know what GPAs are. So that's why it would be helpful to me and to any future mayor, because that's the cool thing about what you guys are doing. It's not just for this year or for next year. It's for until someone changes it. So I've got to look long term. So it would be helpful, and just because we're putting it in, we can also make amendments to it later. So if we want to include another school district, or however you want to do it. But I think you got the okay from Dr. Lee behind you. Are we satisfied with that amendment? Okay. All right. And Alan was clear with, okay. So I guess you can say a friendly motion that the city attorney does what the city manager said and put it on the next meeting agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilmember Ennis.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further discussion?
I just want to echo what my fellow council member said. I really commend you guys for what you're doing and what you're attempting to do. And you've got, as you can tell, you've got the full council support on what you guys are doing. Just keep up the good work. Thank you.
Absolutely. So proud of each and every one of you, and I know your parents are and your teachers are as well. Okay, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I know it's a school night. You are allowed to leave. Don't feel obligated to hang around. Thank you so much, Ms. Brandon, and thank you, Dr. Lee. Okay, it is 7:30. I think For sure, we're going to go one more, and then we may take a break. This next item will be really quick. We're on 9B, consider action to approve resolution number R2017-104, the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, adopting the Bastrop election calendar for the May 5th, 2018, and possible runoff election on June 9th, 2018, attached as Exhibit A, and providing an effective date. Ms. Umble. Madam Secretary, sorry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The calendar that you have in your backup that we're bringing before you tonight, the election code prescribes legal dates that we must adhere to in order to conduct our election, and in order to stay on task and to help the candidates know the upcoming dates, help the council to be aware of the upcoming dates, and to stay legal, we make a calendar and we go by the calendar, we look at the dates, and you will find very pertinent dates on the calendar to guide us through the election. It's the May 5th election for the City Council, May 5th, 2018.
For those of you that are at home, or if you have an iPad in your lap, we're on page 152. If you are thinking about running for office, you would be aware that there will be an election on May 5th, and if you are involved in the second runoff in city history, that election would be on June 9th. That's decided now, and everything's coordinated with the county. So does council have any questions for the secretary?
Move to approve this resolution.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Nelson. I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Okay, we are going to take a really quick 5-minute break. So we are in recess. It is 7:32. I'm calling us back to order. We're on item 9C, consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-30 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances related to Chapter 12 titled Traffic and Vehicles, Article 12.12 titled Golf Carts, and regulating the operation of golf carts on public streets, providing for a penalty for the violation of this ordinance, providing for repealing savings and severability clauses, and move to include on the January 9th, 2018 agenda for a second reading. Chief Adcock.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We've had some citizens come and approach us about the possibility of operating golf carts on our city streets. Presently, we do not have an ordinance that allows it, so it is illegal. The state law does allow a municipality to put an ordinance in that does allow it under certain circumstances, one being it's got to be 35 miles an hour or below. So we sent this to our city attorney, and Alan created miracles in the time frame, but he wrote this ordinance up, and this ordinance allows at events, special events, or anywhere there's a large amount of people, that the city manager or his or her designee can approve a golf cart to operate on our city streets, 35 and below, at any kind of event, but they have to go through the permitting process. This is not an ordinance that's going to allow golf carts just to drive around in our community. They have to be permitted, just like the ordinance lines out. The permit's good for up to 7 days. They're going to go through the permitting process through planning and zoning. It'll be part of the packet on a special event. It's mainly because we have elderly folks that some of our events are so large and they have to walk so far that it's very difficult for them. So it's really to allow that, and then also for some of the workers to shuttle things back and forth. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions for Chief Adcock? Councilmember
Yes,
Ennis?
ma'am. I had understood from reading this that individuals could also be permitted at the city manager's discretion.
That's not correct. It has to be at an event, or if the city manager deems that there is some event going on where there's going to be a large amount of people or pedestrians, then she can, or he can approve that, but it still has to be permitted. They have to go through the registration process in order to do that. So if there's an event, somebody can't just get on their golf cart and drive down there and use it. They have to go through the permitting process. We'll have a registration sticker. They will affix it to the vehicle in the upper left-hand corner. It'll actually have the dates that we are allowing them to operate the cart.
So from now on, we are blocking our citizens from using golf carts as means of transportation, individuals.
No, it's never been legal. Let me rephrase that. At least since I've been here, technically it is not legal for citizens to operate a golf cart inside our community. The only requirement that allows it is if you're within 2 miles of a golf course, and they're going to and from the golf course. We don't have one within 2 miles.
Okay.
So, Chief Adcock, what you're saying is if someone has been doing that, they've been doing it outside of the ordinance.
That's correct. Well, there wasn't even an ordinance.
Okay.
So that is correct.
I'll interject real quick, Mayor and Council, excuse me, Chief. Driving golf carts on public streets is illegal as per state law. That's Texas law. It's been that way for a very long time. The legislature has created exceptions. The legislature has created exceptions to state law to allow cities to allow golf carts in the city limits on certain types of streets below 35 miles an hour if the golf carts have certain equipment. So really the legislature has given us the opportunity to make exceptions. But under state law, it is and has been illegal to drive golf carts on public streets for a long time. But for the exception the chief mentioned, if you're within 2 miles of a golf course and there's evidence you're actually going golfing, which golf bags help.
Okay. So this ordinance is being written because state law says no, and the state allows us to say under certain circumstances, like an event, we can put a time frame around it, and then everybody still remains legal. That's the purpose of this ordinance.
Correct. That's correct. And in this ordinance, it also gives all the specifications on the safety features.
I noticed
headlights, tail lights, side lamps, insurance. They have to have a driver's license. So it really goes into detail before we would approve one. They have to have a lot of things, parking brake, stuff like that.
Okay. Any other questions, council? Happy to entertain a motion?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Nelson.
That it goes on the consent agenda the next.
Yeah, because it's written that way. So it will go on the agenda for the next meeting.
Second, Mayor.
I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. That's a unanimous vote on 9C. Okay, get ready. We're on 9D. It's a test, I think, for me. And if you are at home, we're on page 164. Consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-31 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 3 by adding Article 3.21, Streets, Public Right-of-Way Management, and adding sections to provide for definitions, municipal authorization, registration, compensation, and fees, provide for administration and enforcement, provide for construction obligations, permit required, provide for construction obligations, permit required, provide for conditions of public right-of-way occupancy, provide for insurance requirements and indemnity, providing for improperly installed facilities, provide for restoration of property, provide for revocation or denial of permit, provide for appeal from denial of a permit, provide for inspections, provide for abandoned facilities, provide that underground installation preferred, provide for courtesy and proper performance, provide for signage, provide for graffiti abatement, providing for alternate means or method, waiver, provide for legal action, provide for design manual, provide for prohibited or restricted areas for wireless facilities in the right-of-way, provide for preferred locations, provide for order of preference regarding attachment to existing facilities, provide for placement requirements, provide for concealment or camouflage required when possible, provide for general requirements requirements, provide for an electrical supply, provide for installation and inspections, provide for requirements in the regard to removal, replacement, maintenance, and repair, provide for requirement upon abandonment, provide for general provisions, provide for insurance, indemnity, bonding, and security deposits, provide for design manual updates, provide for administrative hearing, requests for exemption, and provide for the following: findings of fact, enactment, repeal or severability, codification, effective date, and proper notice, and needing and move to include on the January 9th, 2018 City Council agenda for a second reading. Mr. Brandon.
And the good news is, Mayor, the caption will be longer than Wesley's presentation.
Yay!
Say that 10 times fast. Thank you very much, Mayor, Council. This item is represents an issue that we've come up with, or that's occurred with the last legislative session, regarding the way we use our right-of-way and the way we regulate utilities and other uses within those areas. When we're talking about the management of our public right-of-way, it's one of the fundamental duties and responsibilities that a city has. It's one of the fundamental authorities that we have to make sure that the areas that we use that are vital to our everyday life are properly managed, and make sure that that any other utilities that go in those areas are done so in a way that does not interfere with the public's use of that area. And so we use the right-of-way anytime we drive on a street, or anytime we use the utility services that serve our homes. And so the state law gives us the authority to regulate its right-of-way in terms of, and the way we regulate that is through permitting and design standards and inspections. But other utility companies also have the right to go in these areas. And so it's important for us to make sure that while they do have the right to install their facilities inside our right-of-way, that we have rules that properly regulate how those utilities are installed and maintained. And so this ordinance in particular talks about what are called network nodes, and it's a recent bill, Senate Bill 1004, that was passed in the last legislative section and became effective in September. This law establishes a brand new chapter in the Texas Local Government Code. It's Chapter 284, and it requires cities to allow these network nodes to go in the right-of-way. And so that could take the form of either a new pole and equipment, or it could also mean them actually attaching to power poles or other what we call service poles that the city owns and maintains. And so the good news is that cities can still regulate a lot of aspects to these types of utilities. They can regulate the location, the design, and the way that they're built and maintained after they're installed. But we have to have an ordinance that defines these regulations. And our current ordinance that discusses work in the public right-of-way does not really anticipate these types of improvements inside the right-of-way. And so what are these network nodes? So these nodes are box-shaped or small, sometimes large pieces of equipment that are attached to either power poles, or they can be on a standalone pole and operate independently of other utilities. Basically what they do is they provide a link between the larger cell towers that we have around town and the users that are using that service. And so from what I understand, they can kind of combine signals so that it increases the capacity with those larger towers. And it's also supposed to improve reliability with cell and data connections. But you commonly hear them called either small cell antennas or distributed antenna systems. And like I said, they can be attached to about any kind of vertical object, it seems like, within the city or within the right-of-way, or they can be a standalone pole. And so the proposed ordinance that was included in your packet takes what our current ordinance has and enhances it to, one, comply with the Senate bill, which has different standards when it comes to permit review and how much time we can take to review permits, what we can require as part of that installation. It also sets the construction standards and other requirements that relate to the maintenance of these utilities. Another important piece of this is it also can define where these utilities can and cannot go. It also defines other restrictions that are placed in certain areas. Probably most importantly is it does allow us to require what we call a confirmation of non-interference with our safety communication networks. So this would include all of our radios, all of our, I would include our SCADA system. You know, a lot of the systems that we use for our equipment to communicate with each other, we can regulate to make sure that those don't interfere with those systems. Some other highlights that are within the ordinance, we talked about the application process, but it also has requirements for insurance. It has language that helps us enforce standards if the utilities aren't installed properly. It also gives a couple of processes. One falls under the City Council, and it gives them the authority to grant waivers. And I'll get into a second why that might be important and useful. But it also has another process for an exemption that falls under the Board of Adjustment. That would be similar to a variance process. Getting into the design requirements, it has prohibited areas, which include municipal parks and residential areas. It also restricts the placement of these nodes within historic districts and within a certain distance of historic landmarks. So it has a lot of other requirements to conceal and otherwise camouflage the poles that are installed. And then it also lists some preferred areas and gives some other good rules when it comes to what they look like and how they function. And I have to apologize, some of this was not included in the initial packet that you guys received. It's a technical issue on my part, but you should have received an updated packet on Monday morning that would have had the information that wasn't included in the initial packet. So what it all boils down to is, I'd say the bad news is the Senate bill does take a lot of authority away from the city in terms of its ability to approve or deny these types of facilities. But the good news is it does allow us the authority to regulate it to where it doesn't have to be as bad as it could be if we didn't adopt an ordinance that addressed it. So what we're trying to end up with is less of this, which is really what you could see if we don't adopt an ordinance to address these types of facilities. But at the end of the day, it could be something that looks like this. And we talked about the waiver process earlier. This is where these nodes can actually be built to where they can benefit the city. They can be built to function the same as a street light. And so, there's areas in the city that may need additional street lighting, and that gives us a chance to work with companies that come in and request a permit to install the facility and actually have something that could benefit the city in the long run. So that's all I have regarding the ordinance. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Council, any questions for Mr. Brandon?
I have one. Why would an exemption be needed?
That would be for similar to a variance process where there's some kind of hardship. I don't have much experience with these types of facilities, so I don't know what kind of hardship they could demonstrate, but it would allow for, say, an increased height in the pole. It could allow for maybe a different spacing than what the ordinance allows. The ordinance as written requires a maximum or a minimum spacing of at least 300 feet. And so there might be some kind of hardship that the applicant could show and demonstrate that they have.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Councilmember Ennis?
And who has, I read through this, but I need it refreshed. Who has the authority over the design elements?
Well, as far as the application process and when we review the permits, the ordinance spells out very well. I have to thank our city attorney for giving us such a good model to go by, but it does do a great job of spelling out all of the design criteria. It differs between having a standalone pole that the applicant would install versus them actually attaching to one of our power poles. There's a lot more information that we want to make sure that we get in that situation to make sure that the pole is capable of supporting that equipment. And so those are the standards, but when they apply, it would be reviewed through our department.
Anyone else? So this is the advantage of having a city attorney. I guess you're doing this all over the state. There are the cities that you represent as a result of the Senate bill?
We will be. You're probably one of the first 4 or 5 to have done so. And I know the Texas Municipal League is holding a seminar in the spring on this topic for those cities that hadn't done it yet.
All right. Well, we like being on the leading edge. It's got to be done, right? So
they have a right to put these things on our poles, period. We can't stop them. We're even limited in what we can charge them. But if you have an ordinance in place, you can control it and steer it more than those who have no regulations in place.
Absolutely. Councilmember Peterson?
I'm just ready to make a motion.
I'm ready to take one.
I move that we approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-31.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Peterson and a second from Councilmember Nelson. Please note that the way it's posted on 90, that it will be included at the second reading on the consent agenda for the next meeting. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to page 4. Hold a public hearing and consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-32 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending the Code Ordinances, Chapter 14, titled Zoning, Section 37, titled Exterior Construction Requirements, providing a repealing clause, providing a severability clause, providing a savings clause, and providing for an effective date, and move to include on the January 9th, 2018 agenda for a second reading. Ms. Bills.
Hello. So this item is regarding our exterior construction materials requirement. Within our zoning code, we have a section that details the site plan requirements, and one of those is what the exterior of different buildings and different zoning districts have to be sided with. Within our commercial, office, industrial park, and multifamily zoning, these are the allowed materials currently. We allow several different masonry construction materials, wood, glass, hardy plank, or other concrete composite materials, and we allow metal only as an architectural motif over a masonry material. Because not all of you look at these all day like we do, this is some examples of materials. So you'll see stone on a lot of buildings, generally limestone, sandstone in this area. Brick, which is in a lot of the downtown. Concrete masonry units, which is cinder block is one of those types, but it's a formed concrete block. Concrete panel, also referred to as tilt wall construction. Plaster finishes, or stucco, which you'll see on the Bastrop County Courthouse. Glass as curtain walls, or glass block windows, or just glass windows. Wood siding. And then hardy plank, which looks similar to wood siding, but it's actually made out of a cement fiber material that rates as a masonry product. And then the last is the composite materials, such as we say EFIS, which is an exterior insulation and finishing system, which is several layers of material finished with wire and then a masonry finish, kind of similar to a stucco or plaster. Within the zoning districts, street-facing and residential-facing facades must have 100% masonry on the outside, on those faces. And for the facades not facing the street or a residential neighborhood, you have to have at least 50% masonry on the outside of the building, excluding your doors and windows. Within our light industrial district, the requirements are similar, except for if your building is over 7,000 square feet. You can have on sides that are not facing the street or facing a lesser zoning district, which is all of them other than in light industrial, you can have 100% metal siding building. One example, in our industrial park, you have painted metal on the side, and then the front is a plaster and stone finish for the masonry. Other examples of metal buildings that you see throughout town. Within our single-family and two-family districts, we allow pretty much all of those materials except for metal, concrete, or concrete masonry units on single-family. The request that was made by an applicant came about during the site plan review for Covert Chevrolet. They're in the process of completing a site plan to expand their existing building. They're going to add on to both sides and make the bays more interior, have less bay doors, and increase the size of their service area. And they've requested to use a new product it's been around for a little while, but it's newer. That you see it in these applications on commercial buildings. It's a metal-sided building finish with a masonry look, and I have a show and tell here. So from an exterior look, it looks very similar to plaster or an EIFS finish, which we currently allow, and is actually probably more durable than EIFS because it's a thick insulation with metal and then a finished masonry look. And then it's painted. It's actually comes pre-painted, so, and it can be replaced panel by panel if there's any damage. So this request went before the Planning and Zoning Commission at their last meeting, and the recommendation of P&Z was that any requests for alternative building materials not already included on that list come before the Planning and Zoning for consideration and approval. And they also added that this particular product, which is a foam insulated core concealed fastener metal wall panel with a masonry finish, because we don't want to be brand specific, be added as an allowed material. The staff recommendation had been to allow alternative building material requests be made to the planning director and have the planning director evaluate those materials on a case-by-case basis and a site-by-site basis on whether or not it's an appropriate use or material for those areas. And it also allows for a quicker turnaround time once you're in that site planning process. When an applicant has to come before planning and zoning for each request, it could add a month or two to their site plan review times. So the ordinance as written in your packet is written towards the planning and zoning recommendation. And if there are any changes to that, we could bring those back at second reading.
Okay, I'm going to ask you if you have any questions for Jennifer before I open the public hearing. Any questions? Councilmember Ennis?
So P&Z recommended that it come to them for approval of alternative siding.
Correct.
And staff has recommended that it be a ministerial approval with any kind of appeal going to P&Z.
Correct, yes.
That's the difference?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Why is the difference just the additional time?
You have charged staff to become more responsive to the needs of the development community, and time is money. And anytime they have to stop a process and file an application and we advertise and get on an agenda, you've potentially cost them money. So what staff was attempting to do was evaluate this against the criteria and intent already listed in the ordinance, and then let them appeal to planning and zoning.
I was not being critical of staff. I'm just trying to clarify the differences.
Yes.
Any other comment, Councilmember Nelson?
With the evolution of building materials, there's chances there's going to be different presentations made to offer alternate building materials. Once that approval is given, it's gone through the entire vetting process, will there then be a recommendation that that approved material be added to the already approved materials?
I think there could be. I think it would honestly depend on the material, on how tried and true. This is a material that I know has been around for at least 10 years that I've seen used in other communities. So I think that would be one of the factors in if we wanted to add that permanently to the list of allowed materials.
So let me ask Councilmember Nelson's question possibly a different way. Planning and zoning approved this material. Is it your intention that this be then placed on an approved materials list?
That was their intention, yes.
Okay. And your intention was for y'all to be able to do it and not go to planning and zoning, or you wanted to do it on a case-by-case basis?
Case-by-case basis, because in this instance, the site is fairly internal to to this use, and it's a car dealership with bays. It might not be appropriate to use on all commercial development throughout town. I think that, and the other thing is we've evaluated this particular brand. I'm not familiar with every brand of metal insulated foam cord, metal sided. There may be differences in quality between this particular material and another brand.
Councilmember Ennis?
Remind me again who will be making, on the staff level, who will be making the determination, the director of planning?
Planning director, yes.
Okay, thank you.
For clarity, what we have in our packet is that planning and zoning makes the decision on the material.
Yes.
And that then it can be added to a materials list, or that would depend on however they approve it.
It would be based on the recommendation of planning and zoning.
Okay. I watched, I don't know if the other council members watched, I watched planning and zoning, and I know that part of the comments was you've appointed us to this board to be a representative of the community, and they wanted to be a part of the process. And to me, it's that balancing that time. One of the things I wanted to ask was if there was a new material, it doesn't have to have a project to be considered on the material list, correct? Yes. So if someone is talking to you about a material that you haven't had before, they may not have their site plan submitted yet, but you could visit with planning and zoning about that material, so it doesn't necessarily have to slow it down. Is that true, or am I out of bounds?
It's true. Usually this comes up during the site plan process is when we're usually first aware. So.
Okay. Council, if there's no other comments from Ms. Bills, I'm going to open the public hearing. Madam Secretary, do I have anyone signed up to speak for the public hearing?
No, Mayor, no one is signed up.
Is there anyone in the audience that's interested in speaking about this item? Seeing none, I'm now officially closing the public hearing. And now, gentlemen, I'm interested in a motion.
Question?
Yeah,
so what we would be moving to approve tonight would be P&Z's recommendation?
That's what's in your packet.
And then we cure the inconsistency on the second reading? If we go...
It depends on what your motion is. What's in your packet is what P&Z recommended. If you want that, you just motion to approve the way it's written. If you want to do something different, then you'll need to amend what's in your packet. Whatever you approve tonight, whether it's what P&Z did or what you come up with, then that's what will go beyond the second reading.
Okay.
Still happy for a motion, or we can move on? It's up to y'all.
Excuse me, Mayor. I'd like to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-32.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Peterson for the approval of 2017-32 as presented, just for clarity, and move to include on January 9, 2018 agenda. And I have a second from Councilmember Nelson. Is there any further discussion? Is everyone clear on what we're voting on?
So this is as presented?
Yes, sir. We're all clear? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bills. Thank you, Council, that motion 9E is approved unanimously. I am now on 9F. Consider action to approve Resolution R2017-105 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the final plat known as the Colony 1A, Section 1, Phase A, being 23.965 acres out of the Jose Manuel Bang Survey located west of FM 969 and south of the future extension of Sam Houston Drive with an extraterritorial jurisdiction of Bastrop, Texas, attached as Exhibit A, repealing all conflicting resolutions and providing an effective date. Ms. Bills.
Yes, so this is the Colony Mud 1A, Section 1, Phase A, and I'm going to be talking about 3 different ones that are all in the same area, so can get a little confusing. So we've shown you our timeline of the subdivision development process, and where we are today is at the final plat. So at this point, since it's in the mud, we didn't have zoning, but we have a consent agreement with the municipal utility district. The preliminary plat was previously approved. The construction plans have been approved by the city engineer, and now we're ready to consider and approve the final plat. So the location, like I said, we have 3 different ones under consideration. We're looking at Section 1A of Phase 1A. They've got a lot of 1s and A's here. So this is right off of FM 969, and it'll be south of the extension of Sam Houston Parkway. Just kind of a reminder, final plat is required by the Bastrop Subdivision Ordinance and the Texas Local Government Code. And once plats have proven that they meet the ordinance and the local government code, they must be approved. And once this section is approved, the construction of the infrastructure can begin. You'll see with this plat, the first section of Sam Houston Parkway is dedicated up to this point, which will be picked up with the next section. Okay, it's a little under 24 acres. It's currently undeveloped land. It's within our 1-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction and is also within the consent agreement for the Colony Municipal Utility District Number 1, which establishes lot standards for the entire development. And for our future land use, it is a neighborhood residential area. For this section, it follows the lot standard of Colony S, which is a 50-foot wide by 110-foot deep lot. That's a minimum size of 6,000 square feet. They'll be doing 70 lots in this section. And for comparison, the single-family 7 zoning standard is 60 feet by 110 and 7,000 square feet. So a little smaller than the standard single-family in Bastrop. And then I'll turn this over to Wesley to go over the infrastructure.
Fun stuff. Okay, so with this section, the first phase of this is going to include some improvements to FM 969. Councilmember Peterson, I remember during the preliminary plat process, you had some questions about this. As part of these first improvements, they will actually include adding a left turn lane and a new right turn lane on the southbound side of FM 969. So this would be coming into town. Lowe's and Burleson Crossing would kind of be in this area. And so if you're heading southbound on 969, you'll have a dedicated right turn lane. You'll also have a left turn lane that will tie into the future extension on the other side of 969. And then on the northbound side, you'll have a new left turn lane to accommodate traffic heading west into the development. So it's all been permitted through TxDOT. Another piece to this that we don't normally see, but it's kind of neat. The developer is actually working through TxDOT, and it'll actually end up being an agreement between TxDOT, the city, and the developer to go ahead and provide funding for a future traffic signal that is scheduled to be installed when those warrants are met. So when enough traffic develops, there will be a dedicated funding source there to help pay for that signal when those warrants are met.
But that funding source won't be the city.
No, that's correct. It's provided by the developer, but it's the agreement allows the city to make sure that the signal gets built and that money's there to use for it. Yes, thank you for that clarification. Now, as far as the utilities and the street improvements, Sam Houston Drive will come off of FM 969 and tie into the development south of Sam Houston. The water service is actually provided by Aqua Water. They have the colony has a wholesale water agreement to provide domestic as well as fire protection to the development, and so they have a delivery point here at kind of the southeastern corner of the development that provides the pumping system and the storage system that's needed to provide those services throughout this section of the development. And there's long-term plans to connect other parts of the system to provide an even higher level of service. But this is all done in order to meet TCQ regulations. It's going to have gravity sewer lines, and so it's not like a standard county subdivision that would have septic systems. It is a gravity sewer that would feed into a proposed lift station that then gets pumped into the wastewater treatment plant that's owned and operated by the colony. So it's all kind of private utilities. It's not managed by the city. So that was section 1. This is going to be section 2, which is the next 2 items on your agenda, but they're located on the north side of Sam Houston Drive, and they also have gravity sewer lines and underground water lines that will provide fire protection as well as domestic service to these lots. It also provides for future access into adjacent properties. As far as the drainage system, the vast majority of the runoff that's coming from off-site as well as what's developed on the property will be captured and conveyed through an underground storm sewer system across Highway 969 and into a drainage channel that will flow across the property that the developer owns on the other side of 969. And that's how it will make its way down to the Colorado River. And that's just a little more of a zoomed in version. There is a small part of the drainage system that will flow into an existing channel that's located along the western boundary that also eventually makes its way to the river. So that's all I have for the utilities for that. I'll turn it back over to you.
So this preliminary plat was originally approved in February of 2016, and after that point, they did turn in the final plat for consideration, and they've been working with Wesley since then to get the construction plans approved. The next steps for this section is to build the public infrastructure or the mud infrastructure and then record the final plat.
Thank you, Ms. Bills. There's not a public hearing on this one. As she discussed, the final plat is a matter of it meets the requirements. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Bills?
I do.
Mr. Nelson.
So for clarification, well, first of all, the question, when was the TIA completed or approved?
Well, there was an original TIA that was prepared in 2005, and it's gone through several updates since then. Most recently was the update that detailed out the improvements along 969. And so that TIA will continue to be updated as new developments occur that aren't consistent with what the TIA assumes at this point.
And the latest iteration was when?
Was June of this year.
So, okay, yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
So it's very recent.
Thank you for jogging my memory.
They've, and yes.
And then the next question is that I have is, so phase 2 and phase 3 will not start until the traffic count indicates to TxDOT that a traffic light needs to be in place?
No, the turning lanes and the improvements that are being proposed with this initial phase are designed to handle the immediate build-out conditions. So it would include section 1 as well as section 2. I believe it was up to 475 lots could be handled by those improvements before the traffic signal would need to be installed. And so TxDOT will actually continue to monitor the traffic counts, and when they have warrants that are met, that will trigger the installation of the signal. And the benefit of this approach is the developer is depositing that money now, and that money will be available when the traffic signal is warranted.
So it's only Section 3 that will be delayed if there's not a traffic signal in place?
I believe it's 475 lots was the trigger.
Okay.
So depending on how many sections are developed after this section, this one's what, 158? That's not right. 70 and 88, so it's 158 lots. And so there's more lots that could be developed and still not diminish the level of service at the intersection enough to warrant the traffic signal.
Any other questions? Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, I've got a question for Wesley and Ms. Bills. Are y'all satisfied the way this project is going, like in 3 phases? Are y'all satisfied with the progress that's being made or proposed?
Yes, sir. It's been, so this Section 1 has been in our queue for a while, but now that with the new developer, they've come in and they've actually proposed all 3 sections, and so they're wanting to build all of them at the same time. And so we're making a lot of progress in a short period of time, but it's taken a little bit to get here.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Councilmember Ennis.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. That unanimously approved. I'm on 9G. Consider action to approve resolution number R2017-106 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the final plat known as the Colony Mud 1A, Section 2A, being 15.377 acres out of the Jose Manuel Bang Survey Abstract 5, located west of FM 969 within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Bastrop, Texas, attached as Exhibit A, repealing all conflicting resolutions and providing an effective date. Ms. Bills.
So this section 2A is to the north of Sam Houston Drive, and it is specifically the 44 lots on this side and this open space to the west. It connects to the section of Sam Houston Drive that is being built with Section 1A. So this little over 15 acres. All the same conditions as the previous. It's undeveloped in our 1 mile ATJ, part of the consent agreement, and neighborhood residential on our future land use plan. For this section, the lot standard that they're employing is the duplex/townhome, which was added with their last amendment to their consent agreement. The minimum dimensions for that product type is 25 feet by 100 feet deep and 3,000 square feet in size. For this Section 2, they're actually proposing the smallest size is 34 feet wide by 120 feet deep, so a little bigger than the minimum allowed, and with 4,080 square feet. And Section 2A has 44 units, and this is comparable to our single-family attached zoning district in the city. This preliminary plat was just approved in August 8th by City Council. And it was approved as one preliminary plat for the entire Section 2, or 1A, Section 2. So, any questions on that section? And the infrastructure is the same as what Wesley presented.
Council, do you have any further questions? Councilmember Ennis? No question? Councilmember Nelson? Everybody good to go?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Nelson.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Ennis. Is there any further discussion? Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Bills. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Unanimous approval. I'm now on 9H. Consider action to approve resolution number R2017-107 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the final plat known as the Colony 1A, Section 2B, being 8.312 acres out of the Jose Manuel Bang Survey, located west of FM 969 and north of the future extension of Sam Houston Drive, within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Bastrop, Texas, attached as Exhibit A, repealing all conflicting resolutions and providing an effective date. Ms. Bills.
this is the remainder of Section 2, kind of in the middle. You can see on the plat it is these 44 lots and the next extension of Sam Houston Drive. It's approximately 8.3 acres of land, and it'll be an additional 44 units as the second half of Section 2. So it's the same size, 34 by 124 feet and 4,080 square feet. And it's just the second half of Section 2. It went as the preliminary plat as one piece, approved on August 8th.
Thank you, Ms. Bills. Council, any questions? Happy to entertain a motion.
I move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Ennis.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. I'm now on 9I. Consider action to approve resolution number R2017-108 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the final plat known as Pecan Park, Section 6B, being 14.00 acres out of the Mosea Rousseau Survey Abstract 56, located south of the extension of Childers Drive within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, attached as Exhibit A, repealing all conflicting resolutions and providing an effective date. Ms. Bills.
Similar to the last three applications, this is another final plat. So this is the end before they start to construct all the public improvements and sell the lots. The location of this section is, for 6B, is on the extension of Childers Drive to the south, south of Section 6A, which is under construction now, and north of the river. They have a number of Childers Drive will be extended here to this point of the subdivision, and then Rimrock Court will also connect to Section 6A. So they have their two points in and out of this section. This section is 14 acres. It's currently undeveloped, and it's part of the Pecan Park Planned Development Zoning District. The lot standards for this employs one of their single-family standards that is a minimum dimensions of 60 feet by 120 feet deep and a 7,200 square foot lot, which is a little larger than our standard SF7 zoning district, and we'll have 47 lots in this section. Wesley.
Thank you. So this section will also have underground water and sewer lines. The wastewater lines will actually drain from kind of the north, actually this is the southwestern corner, and actually drain down through and connect to Section 6A, which eventually flows into an existing lift station that then pumps wastewater over to our central lift station. So the water lines will actually include an extension of the 12-inch line that's along Childers Drive, and then provide a looped system within Section 6B to provide fire service and domestic water service. So as far as the drainage plans, the section's designed to have an underground storm sewer system that conveys the runoff from up to the 100-year storm into either a channel that's already been installed along the southern boundary of the section, and also into a system that conveys it down to the river. And that's the gist of that system.
And this one was also approved on August 8th of 2017 for the preliminary plat.
Thank you, Ms. Bills. Council, any questions?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Nelson.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion carries. I'm on 9J, hold public hearing and consider action to approve resolution number R2017-109 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, granting a variance to the Bastrop Code of Ordinance, Article 4.02.004, sale of alcoholic beverages, distance of premises from a church, school, or hospital on property located at 1006 Main Street within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, establishing an effective date. Ms. Land.
Hello. All right, so this is, like you just mentioned, a variance to the separation requirements. All right, I just wanted to establish that we have a changing environment downtown, and that TABC regulations regarding measuring distances, we're on private schools. So TABC defines private schools, including parochial schools, as offering a course of instruction in multiple grades and has an enrollment of over 100 students. As we are aware from our variance request not too long ago, Calvary Episcopal School has offered instruction in previous years, but now their enrollment exceeds 100 students, which qualifies them as a private school as defined by TABC. All right, measurements to schools, that is dictated as a direct line from nearest property line to nearest property line. So for our impact area around that school in downtown, it covers more than a block of Main Street. The zoning in this area, that's our downtown mixed use and historic Main Street zoning that does allow for alcohol sales. So even though this school has triggered this new dynamic downtown, any businesses with permits prior to its being defined as a private school can still operate under their existing permits. The new distance requirements, or they're not new, but the distance requirements only affects new permits only, which is why now you're seeing variance requests. Right. As a reminder of the policy, it requires a separation of 300 feet from a church, public or private school, or public hospital, and City Council may grant variances to those separation requirements. Now, variance process, applicant sends a letter requesting the variance. The surrounding property owners are notified. We hold a public hearing, and should council choose to approve the variance, that is done by resolution. All right, the approval criteria. You would consider approval if the enforcement of the separation requirement is not in the best interest of the public, constitutes waste or inefficient use of land or other resources, creates an undue hardship on an applicant for a license or permit, if enforcement would not serve its intended purpose, is not effective or necessary, or for any other reason the council, after consideration for public health, safety, and welfare, and the equities of the situation, determines is in the best interest of the community. Existing locations downtown serving alcohol are Anita's, Pawpaw's, and the recently approved 1008 Main Street. The variance request today is for 1006 Main Street, better known as Main Street Cafe. Main Street Cafe was established in 2014. A local business owner has previously been serving breakfast and lunch options. What they would like to do is expand their hours to include dinner, refresh their menu with locally sourced ingredients, better focus on their customer service, and they would like to be able to serve beer and wine while doing so. So when you put your variance approval criteria in context with this location, the location is in downtown in an area normally zoned for alcohol sales. It does support culinary tourism, and it allows the existing business to adapt to current trends in dining experience. As we mentioned last time one of these came up, culinary tourism is a large part of Bastrop, and it is the pursuit of creating unique and memorable eating and drinking experiences. Main Street Cafe is one of those places, anytime you go somewhere, you're going to eat somewhere, right? You're going to eat local. Main Street Cafe is one of those places you do that. Just a reminder, it's one of the fastest growing sectors of the travel industry. And downtown Bastrop Culinary District includes several downtown eateries, and industry businesses employ 20% of all downtown employees, and it's nearly 30% of all businesses downtown. So far, we have not received any public comments. Does anyone have questions?
The notification you sent was the red circle that we saw?
Yes, it went out to 300 feet within 300 feet within the property boundary.
And if this is approved, then they still have to comply to the 60% and all the other rules. This just allows them to sell the beer and wine.
This just allows them to sell the beer and wine. They still have to comply with the 60-40% food versus alcohol sales. They still have to comply with the normal permitting process and all of the TABC regulations.
Thank you, Ms. Land. Is there any questions from council before I open the public hearing? Seeing none, I'm now officially opening the public hearing. Madam Secretary, do I have anyone signed up to speak?
No one is signed up, Mayor.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak for or against? Seeing none, I'm now officially closing the public hearing, and I'm happy to take a motion.
I move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Ennis.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. Council, any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. I'm now on 9K. Hold public hearing and consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-28 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving an amendment to the Bastrop Code of Ordinances, Chapter 4, titled Business Regulations, Article 4.02, titled Sale of Alcoholic Beverages, and providing for findings of fact, repeal or severability, codification, effective date, proper notice, and meeting to move to include on the January 9th, 2018 agenda for a second reading. Ms. Land.
All right. So why should we update the alcohol ordinance? The existing ordinance is outdated. It includes some unnecessary steps that put unnecessary burden on the applicant. The city secretary is responsible for processing all permits, but part of that process involves the feedback of other departments, such as verifying zoning, verifying distance, that sort of thing. And also the references to the zoning are out of date. The existing ordinance was established before we adopted the form-based code zoning, and so there are no references to form-based code zoning, and you get kind of into a circular logic there. And this clarifies that entire dynamic. The proposed revisions automatically amend with the Texas Alcohol Beverage Code, so should they change anything in the future, we will automatically comply. Planning Department will take the lead in determining appropriateness of location, so our zoning checks, distance requirements. We also have, depending on the permit, property must front on certain roads, so we'll verify that as well. We also clarify the process for separation requirements and the request for variances. As it's written right now, that process is not entirely clear, and its various steps are intermingled into sections of the code, and the proposed revisions just lays it out very clearly on what needs to happen and who does it. All right. Here is an example of our 300-foot notification. So say the business highlighted in red is applying for a variance, we would notify within 300 feet of that property line. So as you can see, it's a pretty good distance, and 300 foot was chosen because there's a 300-foot separation requirement that ensures that whoever is causing the separation requirement be notified as well. It clarifies and strengthens our permitting process, clarifies hours of operation regarding businesses, restaurants on Sundays, clarifies responsibilities for inspections, and updates references to zoning districts to conform with our form-based code. Any questions on the proposed amendments?
Council, any questions? And I assume, of course, since it's in our packet, it means our city attorney has reviewed it and is happy with what what we're proposing. If you didn't read it, I mean, if you aren't the one that wrote it.
I contributed to it.
I thought so. Okay, so everybody's happy on staff and city attorney side. Council, do you have any questions?
Mayor, I'd like to compliment staff on all the work that was involved in this. It shows a tremendous amount of work.
And I'd like to echo that and realize that it does check off our efficiency, where we are not putting people in a circular loop and everybody knows what the rules are and we are able to follow those. I'm happy to entertain a motion if there's no further discussion.
I move to approve.
Oh, thank you. Didn't I open? Oh, I got to do it on this time. I'm officially opening the public hearing. City Secretary, do we have anyone signed to speak?
No one is signed up, Mayor.
Do I have anyone in the audience wishing to speak for or against? Seeing none, I'm officially closing the public hearing. Thank you so much, Councilmember Nelson. Now I will entertain a motion.
And I will move to approve.
I still have a motion to approve from Councilmember Ennis.
Approve.
And I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes.
Council, it is 8:40. We have 5 items left. Do you want to take a quick break before the last 5 items? Or it's up to y'all. Rock and roll, or we need a break? You're okay with going on? All righty. Moving on. 9L, consider action to approve resolution number R2017-88 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, awarding a contract for services associated with operating, supporting, staffing, and providing a public pool to the YMCA of Austin Bastrop branch at a cost of $30,000 and no dollars, as attached as Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents for the contract, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Mr. Joe.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a contract that we started approximately 2 years ago, and it's up for renewal. And the changes that you would see in there are that it will renew automatically once you grant the city manager the ability to sign this agreement. It's also funded in this year's budget, so it's already allocated for. And there's a $10,000 that come from the Water and Wastewater Department and $20,000 for BP&L. And this just helps offset the cost of running the pool service that we don't provide as the city, but we're lucky to have a YMCA that'll do it. So,
for clarification, it's the pool at Bastrop State Park.
Correct.
Any questions of Mr. Joe? Happy to take a motion.
Being the council liaison to the Parks Board, I'm able to listen to the presentation of our YMCA director. And the YMCA is a gem to our community for all generations. So I enthusiastically move for approval.
I have an enthusiastic motion from Councilmember Nelson. Do I have a second?
And a second.
And an equally enthusiastic second from Councilmember Peterson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. That's unanimous approval. I'm on 9M. Consider action to approve resolution number R2017-112 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, authorizing a 25-year lease agreement between the City of Bastrop, Texas and Bastrop Community Senior Center, Incorporated, for the Bastrop Activity Center located at 1209 Linden, Building A, attached as Exhibit A, in consideration for $10 per year and assistance to the city when property is required to be a shelter. Authorize the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing a repealing clause, and providing an effective date.
Mayor and Council, I'm going to take care of this one. This is kind of several things coming together. Back in August of 2016, the City of Bastrop entered into an interlocal agreement with Bastrop County and received a grant for $1.59 million to build what is essentially in that interlocal agreement called the Bastrop Activity Center. This money was a result of the complex fire in 2011 and the need for additional shelters in Bastrop County. The Bastrop County entered into an interlocal agreement with the city of Smithfield, the city of Elgin, the city of Bastrop, and then they too will be building a shelter. In the summer, we experienced Hurricane Harvey, and part of what we came to understand fairly quickly is there's not a lot of staff. I seem like a pretty broken record, but I consistently tell that story often. There's not a lot of us to go around, and one of the agreements with this shelter is that we have to open it anytime the county, the state, or the federal government decides we need to open a shelter. So essentially what that means is that life could be perfectly fine in Bastrop, Texas. The sun could be out, life is great, but somewhere in this state there could be some kind of issue, or in the country for that matter, and these shelters be required to be opened. That becomes a problem because the shelter staff that is assigned in our annex is the library. So if the library has to be open while we're doing a shelter, we're done. Even when we can close the library and open the shelter, there are not a lot of us to get guests logged in, registered. You got to feed them 3 meals a day. They have to have access to showers. You got to provide towels. You've got to essentially run some type of hotel, if you will, in a time when people are coming under the harshest of conditions. So mentally, they're probably not in the best state of mind. So we came to understand very early that we need more hands on deck. We came to you in October and expressed to you that we thought a great partnership would be with our senior community. One of the blessings as you age is you get grace. And we appreciate that when our grandmother tells us to do something, the only answer is yes, ma'am. And sometimes when we need to be fussed at, they can very nicely tell us to stop something, and when you and I might argue with each other, we'll just say, yes, ma'am. So we find them to be a tremendous resource for a lot of reasons. At that point in time, council said, yes, you get the wisdom of that, and we went back and had formal conversations with the Bastrop Community Senior Center. Trey Job held, I believe, 4 meetings with the senior citizens and answered all of their questions. We had a meeting with the Board of Directors, and the Bastrop Community Senior Center voted unanimously to this partnership. Essentially what the stipulations are these, that the Board of Directors, for which there are 12, will agree to participate in shelter training, and if not their board member, a designee. Because we appreciate that there are some seniors that are very active in the senior center that perhaps are not physically able to act as assistants in the shelter. So they would just designate somebody that is and is willing to serve. Essentially, what they will do is they will be trained annually on shelter training. They will be CPR certified. They will be able to utilize the AED device. They will work during daytime hours, which is helpful, and that will let us have more of our staff in the evening. And in exchange for that, what we are providing is a 25-year lease agreement. The reason that this is 25 years is they are currently under a 25-year lease at their facility at 1008 Water Street. That lease was executed in April of 2000 and would expire in April of 2025. So the reason for the length is that's the model that was already established. In addition, we will have an office at this building so that we have a presence there. Our park, well, actually, she's a recreation program coordinator. It's Victoria Pinchak. We'll have an office there so that our presence is already established and we have a place to do the paperwork when it needs to be a shelter. So we're trying to think of that. Essentially what would happen is this lease speaks to that they could be displaced for up to 30 days. Our commitment is at day 7, we will work to find them alternative space. That is particularly important to me because I appreciate that one of the reasons for aging gracefully is having a purpose every day and to be actively involved. And this program for some of our seniors is the way they get out, the way they socialize, and the way they have their meals. So if at day 7 we're still in a shelter situation, we've got plenty of rooms. Their churches will work very diligently to be a good partner with the seniors. In addition, we're going to maintain this facility as if it's ours because it is ours. It is first and foremost a shelter. Second of all, it is a senior facility. So we will maintain the HVAC, the electrical, and all of that. What the seniors have agreed to is they will hire the custodial staff and be responsible for the routine maintenance of the fact that they will use this on a routine basis. Since the building is a city facility to be used for a shelter, we will provide the utilities just like we would at City Hall. We provide the water, we provide the Wi-Fi, we have a cable agreement, and we will do all of that, and our costs are much less than they would be to the public. I think that covers the high points. So at this point in time, I will be happy to entertain any question. The one thing, Barbara Atkins, who is the president of the Bastrop Community Senior Center, is here. Barbara's term was set to expire, and she has agreed to stay on with the support of the Senior Center for the next year to ensure that this lease happens according to plan, that we get the training that we need. Outside of this lease, or actually included in this lease, we have set a date of April 15th for the move to happen. The building is actually on schedule. It's anticipated to finish sooner than that, but I've been here long enough to know life happens in Bastrop, so we've built in a contingency plan. And at the minute that they move in, the lease on Water Street terminates, and this new lease takes off at that time. So I believe that is full disclosure.
I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Ennis.
City Manager, as I understand it from the terms of the agreement, it's a 25-year lease, renewable year by year by year.
No, it's a 25-year lease, and there are provisions to terminate for non-performance.
It just automatically renews from year to year, right?
At the end of 25 years, it's to be renegotiated. Isn't that right? Oh, I'm looking at the resolution.
I'm just trying to clarify because I read that in there and I wasn't sure since it says it's for 25 years commencing on April 16th. Then it says thereafter the term shall automatically renew from year to year for a 1-year term unless and until either party furnishes the other at least 30 days.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry about that. I have moved on since
I wasn't trying to catch you. I was just
that's all right.
Are there any other questions? Was there, and I'm not trying to catch you either, as Councilmember Ennis said, was there a discussion about doing like a trial run and the ability to set up the cots and stuff? Is that?
Part of what we will do annually is we will actually do a training exercise where we move the seniors out and move in as a shelter so that we can become very efficient at doing that. Just as a side note, because this is first and foremost a shelter, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, Chief Adcock, Chief Outgill, myself, Judge Poppy, the city manager and public works director from Elgin and Smithfield, along with the Parks and Recreation director from Smithfield, had a regional meeting here, and we are going to all adopt the same shelter policies. And what that will provide is, say for instance, Harvey impacted Smithfield, and with the same policies, we can be good neighbors and go run their shelters so that their staff can serve their citizens in a way we couldn't help. So we're trying to leverage depth and all of that. So to the mayor's point, once we get these shelter rules and regulations in place, then we will do a test every year so that not only are the seniors comfortable with the process, but we can activate efficiently, there's that word again, efficiently, to do this quickly when called upon.
So the idea that the city was granted that money through an interlocal agreement to provide a shelter. We don't want to wait for the emergency to find out that we don't have all the cots, or we don't know where to put them. So that's how we are showing the responsibility to our citizens that the facility would be available, because quite frankly, it's a higher percentage chance that our own folks will be in that shelter than it will be from someone else that's displaced. Although we are acknowledging the commitment to anyone who should need the shelter.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation, City Manager. Council, any further questions or discussion? I'm happy to entertain a motion.
A move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Ennis.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Nelson. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. That's a unanimous approval. Thank you, Ms. Barbara, for staying so late. I'm now on 9N, consider action to approve resolution number R2017-113 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, confirming appointments by the mayor to the Historic Landmark Commission and Planning and Zoning Commission as required in section 3.08 of the city's charter as outlined in Exhibit A, establishing an effective date. And I'll be doing this presentation, and I promise to go quickly. Our Historic Landmark Commission requires that Place 5 be filled by someone who is on the Planning and Zoning Commission. The reality is that the mayor, the way it's written, the mayor can appoint anybody they want. I think it's better if you get someone who is A, interested, and B, qualified. So I like Planning and Zoning to pick amongst themselves who would be best to fill that position. On November 3rd, P&Z unanimously approved that Diana Rose be appointed to Place 5. She's a real estate professional. She also does home inspections for people that are buying new homes. So I think she'd be an excellent person, and it would fulfill the Historic Landmark Commission bylaws and ordinance, and also be in conjunction with what P&Z asked for. Speaking of P&Z, we recently had a resignation, and so Place 1 needs to be filled. The term would end in 2019. I got an application from Cheryl Lee. She has been a resident of North Bastrop for over 40 years. We do not have representation from North Bastrop on the Planning and Zoning Board, and she has an interest in contributing to the neighborhood and the community, and so I'm offering her up as a person to fill the remaining term of Place 1. That makes my appointments to date 47. I have 62% of those 47 people have never served on a board before. 43% are downtown, 40% are other than downtown, but inside the city limits, and 17% are within the extraterritorial jurisdiction or the county. 43% are male and 57% are females. I'm looking for more male applicants. There's not any bias there, but I'm using the applications that I get. With that, I respectfully request approval of these appointments. Any discussion or questions?
So move.
I have a motion from Councilmember Nelson to approve.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. That's a unanimous approval. We're now on 9O. Oh my gosh, we only have one more after this. Consider action to approve resolution number R2017-114 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, ratifying the purchase of 0.041 acre tract adjacent to the cemetery property, Bastrop County Property ID number 123510, Farm Lot 67 EM Street, approving a purchase price of $3,400, authorizing execution of documentation, providing for a repealer, severability, and an effective date. Ms. Waldron or Ms. Humble?
I'm going to kind of give a little background and then Tracy will explain it. I am asking you to ratify this purchase in an effort to be very open and transparent. I have read the charter multiple times and there is nothing that speaks to whether or not I have the authority to buy property. I'm suspecting that the reason for that is it's very rare to buy real property for less than my signature authority, which is exactly what Tracy is going to explain to you. So even though I can, it doesn't mean I should. And when we're going to be buying property for investment purposes for the city, I believe we have an opportunity to provide notification to the public and allow you an opportunity to vote on that. And so with that in mind, this is no different. So I'm asking you to ratify something probably you don't have to, but in the spirit of open, transparent government, I would appreciate your consensus.
Ms. Waldron, you're going to give us a few details?
Yes, so we did get notified that there was the little tiny piece that my little arrow is pointing to was going to be on the tax sale. We got notification on December 4th with the tax sale being on December 5th. And so we own the lots that say COB, that's City of Bastrop. I'm really good with maps. But I wanted you to be aware that, we already own those two lots and then the lot on the other side. We've attempted to buy one of those lots in the middle twice. So anyway, when this came on, we felt it prudent to try to go ahead and secure the rest of the properties in front of the cemetery. So the cemetery is all the yellow part back there. The other yellow part.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's quite a bit of yellow on that map, Ms. Waldron.
Different colored yellow part. Allison was busy today. I was going to help her do that map. So anyway, I went down to the tax sale and we acquired the property. But as Ms. Humble said, we would like for y'all to ratify the purchase.
Any questions from council?
I got one question before we proceed. Maybe someone in this room can refresh my memory, but didn't the city acquire or was given some property from the Dryden resident on the back side of the cemetery? Did we ever secure that property? It was like, I think it was set up for the pauper graves.
I would have to do some research. I'm not aware, but I'd have to do some research.
Thank you. I just hit my brain that we did something like that a few years ago to where the property was donated to the city.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions for council or Ms. Humble?
Move for approval.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Peterson.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Ennis. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Unanimously approved. We're on 9P. Consider action to approve resolution number 2017-115 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, assigning voting rights by proxy by the City of Bastrop, Texas to Noe Reyes Esquire for the Pine Forest Property Owners Association 2018 annual meeting, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documentation, providing for a repealing clause, and providing an effective date. Ms. Umble.
Mayor and Council, the law firm of McCrary, Veselka, Bragg, and Allen are the delinquent tax attorneys that Bastrop County contracts with to collect taxes. We contract with Bastrop County to collect our taxes. Therefore, this law firm handles the collection of our taxes. In previous years, and including this year, Bastrop County assigns voting rights by proxy to Noe Reyes to attend the meeting and vote on behalf of Bastrop County. We own a couple of lots. It's not many in Pine Forest Unit 6. So what this would do is allow Noe to attend that meeting on behalf of the City of Bastrop and vote by proxy for the benefit of not only for the City of Bastrop, they have gotten that authorization from Bastrop County as well. So I'm asking for approval of Resolution 2017-115 that would authorize Noe Reyes Esquire to attend the 2018 annual meeting and vote on behalf of the City of Bastrop.
Council, any questions for Ms. Umble? Seeing none, I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Peterson.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Ennis. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Unanimously approved. Thank you very much, Council. There is no executive session, so there will be no appropriate actions. We're at Mayor Pro Tem Schiff's favorite item, 12, adjourn.
Move for adjournment.
I have a motion from Councilmember Peterson. Somebody give me a second.
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Ennis, and it is 9:04, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.